Check it. Whether it's your first time or you need a retreat, this is your place for video games and fresh beats. LBnMie, Last Benevolence and Kimmie. 2020 has been a very strange year. Seriously, I mean, if I were able to send my 2014 self an email predicting that PSO2 would come out in the West just a few days away from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in the same year as a good live-action Sonic movie, I'd probably think someone was pranking me. And I wouldn't believe it if I were told that Sephiroth would be in Smash that same year and that there would be this worldwide pandemic, all of this happening while that rich guy from The Apprentice was the president. I'd probably reply back to my 2020 self in an email saying, "You're fired." Yes, it's been a strange year, all across the board it seems. Not to mention, Kimmie and I played more games that came out in the same year than any other year ever. So this time, we're not just going to talk about our top 5 games of the year, but we're also going to talk about some random games we enjoyed playing, and we'll even include some titles that we were disappointed with. This year, I played a lot of games, too many to list, but I wanted to mention a few that weren't on my top 5. Operencia the Stolen Sun came out on consoles back in March, and I was following it at least a little bit because I was interested in having a good first-person dungeon crawler on the Switch. But because of the things going on at the time, along with the crazy lineup of games coming out, I only wishlisted it instead of picking it up at launch. Anyway, I got to try the opening parts of the game on the Switch, and let me tell you, this one looks gorgeous. The gameplay and dialogue are pretty solid as well. Being a fan of the Etrian Odyssey games on the 3DS, I can easily recommend this title as a good alternative for anybody who liked those games or any other turn-based dungeon crawlers. Another game I wanted to mention was Torchlight 3. Again, I've only played a little bit of this one, and from what I could tell, it seems like the gameplay features as well as the character customization and the UI design are a bit better than in the second one. But maybe I'm doing something wrong because I can't seem to use the character that I created in single player in the multiplayer mode. And on top of that, it seems like they took out the local wireless mode, which isn't a deal breaker for me, but it is kind of annoying if you want to play multiplayer with someone nearby without the need of the Wi-Fi password. Still, I find myself enjoying the world, the sound design, and visuals of this one more so than the other one, so I'm planning on spending more time with it in the future. Trials of Mana was supposed to be a special one for me, as I remember emulating the fan-translated SNES ROM of this game back when I was in high school. For me, this game was called Seiken Densetsu 3, and it was one of my favorites on the SNES. This remake was definitely polished and welcome, but I spent very little time with it, and I don't know, it just seemed a little dry compared to the other games coming out around the same time. The competition at the time was pretty fierce, as you'll see in my top 5.
Honorable mention, Genshin Impact. This game is just amazing. It's like everything is here. The nice art style, places, things you can do such as cooking, traveling, climbing, gliding, fighting, and there is even a multiplayer mode as well as a bunch of characters to play with who each have their own story. This is just cool. What really amazed me is that you can play with friends even if they are using different consoles. Just be patient and enjoy the game while you earn more unlockable characters, because if you don't, you'll be broke.
Genshin Impact. Oh, Genshin Impact.
Yeah, boy.
There's a bit of a love-hate relationship between me and Genshin Impact. I really love this game. The gameplay, the design, the graphics, the voice acting. It's weird because I thought I wouldn't be into it when I first heard about it, but man, I spent more time on Genshin Impact than I really thought I would. But the system for obtaining characters is not the greatest. It's pretty much a good game that got away with a dicey loot box system. No lawsuits, no uproar from fans, just straight up praise, despite pretty much having straight up gambling in it. And while it is possible to go completely free to play with it, including its randomized character unlocking feature, it takes a long time to grind for the in-game currency to unlock characters, decent characters. And I feel like I had the worst experience with it too. Every time I tried rolling for another character, I'd look at the results like,
No, God!
I probably played more of this game than anyone else I know, but for a long time, I was pulling characters I really didn't want or really cared for. Again, love-hate relationship.
Dishonorable mention: Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. Crystal Chronicles looks nice and has a very unique style. For me, carrying a chalice is already challenging, and its protection range is kinda small. The dungeons are small too, which makes it feels like you're not going anywhere. And you can't travel with friends even if you're online. You only see yourself traveling, and only the host can get letters and progress. I feel like it's unfair. Since the friends work as a team, I wish everybody gets the same thing. I never played the original, but DJ tells me that in the old version, everyone traveled together and everyone made progress and got letters. It's kind of sad. I wish it was like that because I wanted to see more.
My friends and I were really looking forward to the remastered version of Crystal Chronicles. You have to understand, my brother and I had played this game in co-op mode with friends back in the day on the GameCube, and it was without a doubt one of the greatest co-op RPG experiences, period. So when they announced the remastered version, we were hyped. Delay after delay later, I remember finally hopping into this game like,
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
they completely jacked up the multiplayer, and that's the core feature of the experience. No shared caravans anymore either. It was always like this version was trying to encourage us to pretend that we were in the same caravan. On top of that, every time we beat a dungeon, the party would have to break up. I'd be looking at Kimmie sitting over here staring at me like,
Just like that, she was gone.
Unfortunately, this game wasn't just a dishonorable mention for 2020, but it was one of the most disappointing releases that I've ever looked forward to. Then there was Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Now look, this game is like a really, really, really good and polished prototype. Which I say with a heavy heart because I actually enjoyed enough to beat the game, but it felt so empty doing it. I beat the last boss thinking, was that really it? Did I really beat the game? The game feels like it's building up to some big monumental final act, and then it just sort of flatlines like, it feels like the developers had an ambitious concept of the game when they first started making it, like as if they were originally planning to make it an open world game or some sort of less linear type of game with more player freedom, but just dropped the concept somewhere in the middle of development due to budget or deadlines. And I say that because of the game's deep weapon and skill tree systems. You could tell that they took inspiration from games like the Batman Arkham series, which may not all be open world games, but at least when they were not open world, they played like Metroidvanias. Now that I'm thinking about it, it would have been nice if it was designed like a Metroidvania with backtracking and puzzles. If it had that style of world design, it probably wouldn't have felt like it was missing something. My number 5 is Streets of Rage 4. Okay, so confession time. I had zero hype for this game. When they announced it, I thought it was just another silly excuse for Sega and whoever they partnered up with to cash in on some sweet nostalgia. They seem to be relying on nostalgia quite a bit lately. But they did this one justice. They brought back Adam. and that's all that matters.
Immortals Fenyx Rising. This game feels different. It's so rare to get a game that has a narrator that describes what you're doing while you're playing. This reminds me of Bastion. It feels weird, but at the same time, it's fun to hear two people talking about what my character is doing. It was a bit challenging for me to play this one at first because I really needed to use my brain to solve puzzles. Every game has different buttons and controls, and this one is like all over the place. I have to really think about what I'm doing before I press a button because it's different than most games, but I'm starting to get used to it. Also, the combat is amazing. It's so crunchy and it feels easy to control. Although I'm in the story mode, I appreciate how it doesn't feel like it's moving too fast. I also like using the bow. It's fun to shoot and it takes focus to aim and control the arrows. I guess I have one personal nitpick. My character is a woman, but she walk and talk like a man. Maybe I'm just a girly person and prefer to be that way even when I'm playing, especially if I have a choice of making a female character. Still, I really like this game.
My number 4 is Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. I've been really wanting to talk about this game on the channel. Kingdoms of Amalur only recently became one of my favorite games, and it seems to be the unsung hero of open world Western RPGs. There's a lot that this game does right. Deep and immersive world building, interesting stories and side quests, eye-catching and stylistic graphics, countless things to do, and highly customizable character building. It has everything you'd want in an open world high fantasy RPG. But even while it does a good job at all of those things, the real highlight here is the combat. I could go on and on about how great it feels, but I probably wouldn't even be able to effectively describe what makes it so satisfying. This is one of my favorite games, and I really hope THQ Nordic ports it to the Switch. The only reason why this remaster isn't higher on this list is because my top 3 games of this year are also some of the best games that I've ever played.
Sakuna of Rise and Ruin. I'm from the Philippines, and back home, we always say that rice is life. It's crazy because in this game, rice is power. The beginning of the story is funny, but there's a lesson you can learn. I really appreciate how beautiful the artwork is, how cute the enemies are, and how fun the gameplay is. I like how you use something like a rope to move around and fight. I'm kinda get used to platforming, which seems to be very essential in side-scrolling games. It's easy to follow the directions in the game and find what you want and need. Every character in the game has a different role, and they're just so adorable looking. I do recommend this for you to play if you want a cute farming game with an action platforming twist.
Phantasy Star Online 2 is my number 3, and again, you know I'm not messing around because Phantasy Star is my all-time favorite series. I just wish there was more from this franchise. Phantasy Star has always had a unique take on sci-fi fantasy, and one thing that every game seems to do well is builds some really deep lore-filled worlds. Of course, there are other things that makes these games great, like character designs, loot, music, art style, music. Trust me, the music is phenomenal, and nothing is different with PSO2. Plus, the combat in this game is the only type in an action RPG that I would put above Kingdoms of Amalur's. PSO2 has done well all across the board, and plus it's free to play. If you haven't, please try this game. It's free for the PC and current gen Xboxes as well as Xbox One. You just need Xbox Live or Game Pass to play it if you go with Xbox. There's so much to do in this game that it's overwhelming, and it would be higher on my list if, again, it weren't for my top 2 games.
I love playing Xenoblade Chronicles. The story is deep and the world you travel through is very unique. The combat is very different from other games, so using skills correctly can be challenging. This one is single player, so you play by yourself, but the other characters have their own AI. So they're like friends that are fighting with you. It makes you feel like you're part of a team. The art style is amazing and so is the story.
My number 2 game is Persona 5 Royal. Now let me get this out of the way. I'm not a fan of the Persona games. I'm not even remotely interested in playing any of them.
You serious?
Dead serious. But check this out. I like this game for the sweet spot that it managed to hit between its stylish vibe, its story, characters, music, setting, and time management systems. Like, I don't even care for the battle system. To me, it's cool, but not enough of a jump from the basic JRPG turn-based formula. And most of all, I really don't care much for the personas in the game or the persona system. To be honest, I think it's just some edgelord crap that's teetering on the edge of unnecessary sacrilegious nonsense. You can hate me for it, but let me finish here. It's my number 2 game, and it beat out a title from my favorite series of all time. Why? Dude, it's basically like going to high school with your buddies all over again, except it takes place in Japan, and you're basically moonlighting as a superhero that helps people through non-violent methods. I grew up daydreaming about this kind of stuff when I was growing up. And the music, it's so good. Once a battle starts, it has me jumping out of my seat like,
You never see it come back.
the music in this game blows at least 70% of all game soundtracks straight out of the water. Absolutely, hands down, no questions asked.
Animal Crossing New Horizons. Who would say no to Animal Crossing? It has everything. Although there are no enemies or battles, there are some challenges from time to time that you will do and it's cute. Imagine getting stuck on an island with others who appreciate you and do things to make the island more like a village or a nice place to live. And the characters are cute talking animals who you can be friends with. You can dive and swim, build houses, plant and water the plants, harvest, catch different types of insects, collect different species, and even have a museum of dinosaurs. It's also like a very cute dream. Being able to personalize your stuff and have friends over to visit your island or visit their island is just awesome. Wow! I kinda miss a lot of things that I did in Animal Crossing New Leaf, but that's okay. The best part is that this game is for everybody, either young or old.
My game of the year for 2020 is Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is how masterpieces are made. Maybe I'm biased, maybe it's all nostalgia or something, but everything that was done in this game and the way that it was designed and developed just felt perfect. Now, as most of my friends and family know, I've played the original Final Fantasy VII and just loved it to death, mostly because of the story and the characters. This game reimagined the events in the opening act of the game in such a way that it felt so faithful to the original. You know, the original lacked voice acting and facial expressions and the things that modern games now have. Players had to fill in those blanks themselves in the original using their own imagination, and yet it felt like the way they executed every inch of this version of the game was lifted straight from my own personal interpretation of the story and the characters in the world. It was downright shocking to me. I've never felt like the developers for a game were on my side creatively until I played this. Then there were people complaining about the ending of this game, but don't listen to them. Without spoiling it, I'd say that it's better to play the original first and then go into this game thinking of it as a sequel or even maybe a soft reboot. The narrative choices taken here were probably done to preserve the original while still bringing something fresh to the table, and I welcome it because after what they did with this game, I completely feel confident in whatever they have in store for the sequel, as long as they stick to their creative vision.
Phantasy Star Online 2 is my game of the year. The first time I played this game with my husband was a few years ago on the Southeast Asian servers, after we first got married. For real. Not many girls play games and it's not a thing from where I come from. But I love this game so much. Making your own character and dressing your character is just incredible. It reminds me of Terra, which I first played with DJ when we were dating. What makes this just beautiful is that you can still buy outfits without real money by gaining the in-game money called meseta. You earn most of your meseta by selling rare items you find to other players, and you always have the choice to pay real money, which I only do when I really want to get something I need or want for my character. This is a free-to-play MMO. Sometimes, it makes me feel like I want to be the best. But most of the time, I enjoy the game with DJ and our friends as a team. This game is legendary.
Had to be a scam. I made very little progress, yet here I am. A year closer to my 30s, getting older, but we played many games while riding this roller coaster. You know, I think of my flows outside of boxes, solid like a rocket, so I guess I rock it. Rhymes spilling out my brain like fluid up in my pocket. This year didn't spoil the party, it straight stopped it. Back to topic, here's my synopsis. Starting with the games that were worse than we had thought it possible. I have to say the Crystal Chronicles and Samurai Jack Battle Through Time were both dishonorable. No, they weren't the worst titles I've ever played, but they fell pretty short of the hype that they made. Of course, dwarfed by the infamous Cyberpunk. Glad I wasn't ever sucked into the hype of that junk. 2020 was a joke that wasn't funny with RPGs that had us giving away our money. PSO2, Final Fantasy, Kingdoms of Amalur, Re-Reckoning, Genshin Impact, Trials of Mana, Persona 5 Royal, and Operencia. And that includes others we can't ignore like Animal Crossing and Streets of Rage 4. 2020 was a joke that wasn't funny with RPGs that had us giving away our money. PSO2, Final Fantasy, Kingdoms of Amalur, Re-Reckoning, Genshin Impact, Trials of Mana, Persona 5 Royal, and Operencia. And that includes others we can't ignore like Animal Crossing and Streets of Rage 4. Starting off with the honorable mention, both Kimmie and I decided on Genshin Impact, probably the biggest surprise. Immortals Fenyx Rising was Kimmie's number 5, mine was Streets of Rage 4. Next was Sakuna, Rice and Ruin, then Kingdoms of Amalur, or Amalur, excuse the pronunciation. Xenoblade was Kimmie's number 3, one of my favorites. I know what you're thinking at the moment. I didn't play it this year, so it wasn't chosen. PSO2 was my 3rd, Persona 5 was even better than I heard, and that's my number 2. There's no taking it back. Animal Crossing was Kimmie's as a matter of fact. And for our games of the year, we present to you Final Fantasy 7 Remake and PSO2. 2020 was a joke that wasn't funny with RPGs that had us giving away our money. PSO2, Final Fantasy, Kingdoms of Amalur, Re-Reckoning, Genshin Impact, Trials of Mana, Persona 5 Royal, and Operencia. And that includes others we can't ignore like Animal Crossing and Streets of Rage 4. 2020 was a joke that wasn't funny with RPGs that had us giving away our money. PSO2, Final Fantasy, Kingdoms of Amalur, Re-Reckoning, Genshin Impact, Trials of Mana, Persona 5 Royal, and Operencia. And that includes others we can't ignore like Animal Crossing and Streets of Rage 4. Now if you like our videos or the rhymes or our vibes, like, hit the bell, tell a friend, and subscribe. We don't do video monetization. You can support us by becoming one of our patrons. The link's in the description. Thanks for listening. We are Kimmie, and last benevolence. Shout out to our patrons, DeMarcus Davis and Phil Gionicus, man. You guys are the greatest.